Hello, folks. This is Andrew Gilmore. Some of you might know me from my other show, Mostly Movies, Maybe Music. And this show is Classic Comedy Conversations. This is a new experiment here. And I'm here with my friends Anthony Gargano and Brian Paige. Guys, do you want to say hello to the audience?
Hello, audience.
And, well, you can see, for those of you who are watching the visual feed, our guest is Noah Diamond, who I'll talk more about in a minute. But, Noah, do you also want to give a greeting to the people out there?
No, that's okay, Andrew. I'll do it.
Okay, you should be quiet then. You'll be playing Harpo in this episode. Anyway, this is kind of an experimental thing because if you follow Mostly Movies, Maybe Music, you might have seen the show that I did with Brian and Anthony where we did a tribute to the comedy team of Wheeler and Woolsey a few months ago. And we're all big Wheeler and Woolsey fans as well as fans of classic comedy in general. And after the show, the three of us started texting back and forth on Facebook, and we've been through all these text messages suggesting that we get together again and do something. And long story short, that turned into the idea that the three of us are going to be doing shows about classic comedy movies, and one of us will pick a movie to talk about, and we'll just have kind of a free-form discussion on a movie of our choice. And so that's why we're here. And our first movie, this was my choice. We're covering Horse Feathers, the 1932 Marx Brothers movie. And our guest, as I've already indicated, is Noah Diamond, who is the co-host of the Marx Brothers Council podcast and is a very experienced comedian and writer and actor. And I interviewed him on Mostly Movies, Maybe Music last year, and that went well. So I figured, why not have him on this show? And especially if we're talking about the Marx Brothers, then he's really the one who's done more research into that subject than any of us. So he seemed to be the logical person to have on this show. So we have a couple of segments. There were things that Anthony suggested that we cover before we get into the deep dive on horse feathers. But I guess that's kind of my introductory spiel. So I just want to thank everybody for being here, and I'm looking forward to seeing how the show goes. So first of all, I wanted to do something that Anthony suggested, and I think we should just, by way of introduction, go around and just talk about how we became interested in old comedy movies in the first place. And I was thinking about the fact that we're all relatively young. I guess you're all in your 40s. I'm about to turn 40, and that's unusual. I guess most people who are into classic comedy are more in their 60s or 70s or maybe older than that. So I wanted to just get the backstory here and learn how you guys got into old comedy movies. So Anthony, why don't we start with you?
Sure. Yeah, and Andrew, I want to thank you for having me as part of this experiment. And yeah, I'm really excited to see where it goes. I got into classic comedy and classic horror way back when I was like 2, 3 years old. That's how old I was when my dad, back in New York, I grew up in the suburbs of New York, in Rockland County, and he would show me every Sunday morning. It was the Three Stooges and Abbott and Costello on WPIX 11. And
Yeah.
in addition to that, Laurel and Hardy, the Marx Brothers, Jerry Lewis. My dad was a huge fan of all of these guys. And when I was, like I said, I was that young. I was 2, 3 years old. He was popping me, on the couch, and I was watching all of these guys. And as I got older, 5, 6, 7, I mean, still young, right? But I noticed that like it was more than just sort of entertainment for me. Like I was really interested in the people up there on the screen. And one of my grandpas, he worked at a lot. My mom's dad worked at a library. He was retired. He worked part time at a library, so he'd bring home books for me to read, and it was all classic comedians, classic comedy.
Yeah.
And my dad, and this is a funny, real quick. My dad gave me this book by Mr.
Ah,
Isles, who Noah just had on his podcast.
yes.
When I was very, very young, and this is, I think, an original 1966, 1969 copyright. Um, yeah, and this book is incredible. Every time I watch one of the Marx Brothers films, I'll read his chapter, Alan Isles' chapter, on the film afterward. I didn't do it this time just because I didn't, I wanted you know, my discussion, my criticism, whatever, my analysis to be fresh.
Yeah.
But I will, after our discussion, I will read his chapter on horse feathers again. But this book I love. I love how Alan Isles talks about how the characters um, changed depending on who was writing, depending on which studio they were with at the time. Love all of that. So then that was something again that my dad got when he was, I guess, like in college or in his 20s or whatever, and he passed on to me. So it was my dad that introduced me to all the classic comedy, and it went from there.
Yeah. Well, that's kind of typical. I mean, I had a similar experience, and I'll get to that. Brian, what about you?
Maybe not quite as in depth as what Anthony had to say there, but it was pretty much when I was about like 10 or 11, and I started watching stuff on AMC. And the first old classic comedy I saw on there was Animal Crackers.
Uh,
And then from that point on, I looked up every single Marx Brothers movie I could find. The second one, oddly enough, they showed was Room Service. But
hmm,
but and then I just went through there and made various rental stores. You could just go and find these just at any local rental store. They had them back then. Even Kroger's just had Marx Brothers movies. You could just check them out at the store when you were going. And
yeah,
I watched those. Then I made my way through like Wheeler and Woolsey when they started showing up on AMC. I watched those. We covered that like in the other podcast. But and just every other comedy team I could find, I started watching all these old comedians.
yeah. So, Noah, what about you?
Well, it is hard sometimes to figure out why you're drawn to what you're drawn to. And when I was a little child, for whatever reason, funny stuff appealed to me. I just loved anything funny. I also had, although I wouldn't have been able to describe it this way, I loved a thing that I would later identify as show business. I loved presentational singing and dancing and telling jokes that sound like jokes. When I was a little kid in the late 70s and early 80s, the first thing I responded to that pointed in this direction is definitely the Muppets. The
Yeah,
Muppets announced themselves so loudly to me. And I didn't know at the time that I was getting ready for the Marx Brothers, but that's what the Muppets did for me. And whenever I'm asked who else is like the Marx Brothers, what other comedians are similar to them, or where would you go next to get more of what you get from the Marx Brothers, my somewhat unconventional answer to that is never another comedy team. It's always the Muppets. That's what I think you need to match the Marx Brothers level, like an army of dedicated creative people with arts and crafts supplies building things that couldn't possibly happen in real life, because that's what the Marx Brothers seem to do. My
yeah.
parents had Joe Adamson's book,
Hmm.
Groucho, Harpo, Chico, and sometimes Zeppo, which was formative for me in the same exact way that you're talking about the Alan Iles book, Anthony. I just loved looking through that book even before I was able to read it. I just found it on my parents' shelf, and the photographs of the Marx Brothers, I think they reminded me of the Muppets for one thing, but also of Dr. Seuss and Maurice Sendak and Alice in Wonderland. Children's literature has such a lot of rhyme with the Marx Brothers and with the best of comedy. And I think, it's the tendency toward absurdism and all these things I would later identify as fairly advanced, intellectual conceits, but all in the guise of funny songs, jokes that most people wouldn't have the nerve to deliver while looking you in the eye. And I was just hooked on it right away and ever since.
Yeah. Well, so I guess we all have some things in common there. And I guess just for myself, I'm the youngest here. So I was very much a VHS kid. I was a 90s kid. And I remember my parents, I guess similar to you, Anthony, my parents would bring home tapes of things that they thought I should see. And my dad would bring home movies and just say, oh, you should watch this. This is funny. So that's how I got into the Marx Brothers. And my mom introduced me to Laurel and Hardy and the Three Stooges. I guess my dad also introduced me to Monty Python, which is kind of in a similar vein, a different era, but I guess that's something else that people who are drawn to comedy would tend to like. So, yeah, I don't want to make it a long story because I want to give everybody some space here, but yeah, I was just watching comedy movies on VHS when I was a kid, and especially getting into the Marx Brothers. I mean, that was certainly more pivotal for me than anything else. And I guess, oh, well, there's, before I get to the next question I was going to ask, there's something else that I know, Anthony, you wanted to feature as a segment on our show here, and that's you wanted to talk about upcoming DVD or Blu-ray releases of classic comedy movies. If there's anything there that's coming out that you want to talk about.
Yeah, no, I'll be really brief. Since this is the first episode, we want to dive into the film. But one of the things that the three of us talked about in getting the show prepared was all of the physical releases that are out there. There are a lot of people out there that are physical, movie collectors like I am. If Marx Brothers or Laurel and Hardy or any of these classic comedies come to Blu-ray or even 4K, we're seeing a little bit. I'm always the one to kind of jump on the release, see when it's coming out. And what I wanted to cover for this episode, Marx Brothers specific, is Warner Archive. The Warner Archive collection is blue. So far, it's mostly Blu-ray. They have, touched into 4K a little bit. And they've released three Marx Brothers films so far. Night at the Opera, Day at the Races, most recently At the Circus. Now, I know At the Circus isn't everyone's favorite, but the restorations that Warner Archive has done is incredible. They all look amazing. I mean, as Noah knows, Night at the Opera is still missing the opening segment. I guess that footage has been found in Hungary, I think. I heard on your podcast, Noah, that I think the footage has been found. It's not incorporated in the new Blu-ray, but the Blu-ray looks stunning. Possibly, I wonder if Warner Archive will grab that footage and maybe put a 4K out, which would be amazing. But if not, the Blu-ray looks amazing as is. And you can find Warner Archive releases on Amazon and also a site called moviezing.com. And that's zyng.com. In the search button there, you can just type in Warner Archive and you can scroll through all their releases. They also released Kentucky Colonels with Wheeler and Woolsey. They released Bachelor in Paradise with Bob Hope. They've released a slew of the Red Skelton films, the musicals mostly. I just watched Do Barry Was a Lady with Skelton, Lucille Ball, and Gene Kelly. Again, the restoration is incredible. So Warner Archive collection for all you physical collectors out there. And in future episodes, we'll get into other labels and other films that are coming out. And one last bit of information, Warner Archive will be releasing Bonnie Scotland with Laurel and Hardy on July 28th. And I'm sure that restoration is again going to look incredible. And they are working on The Devil's Brother with Laurel and Hardy. So look out for that as well in the future.
I have a quick question.
Yeah.
You mentioned this opening scene of A Night at the Opera.
Yeah.
Did it begin originally some other way?
It began with Italy, right, Noah? Like,
Yeah, what actually the entire film on its eventual re-release, my understanding is it was scrubbed of all direct references to Italy.
yes.
So it's not just the opening sequence. That's the big one. It originally began with a musical sequence that made explicit that the story was beginning in Italy. And in fact, A Night at the Opera, especially for such a polished film, it does have this strange beginning. It begins in the middle of a sentence. It begins with the waiter saying, "Gentleman has not arrived yet," because the opening of the film was just cut right out. And there's I'd have to go back and listen to my own podcast episode to get this straight, but I'm pretty sure Tom Rocks, who's the comedian and scholar who went to Hungary and explored this and reported back to us, I think what he told us is that the opening sequence is actually not in that Hungarian print, but other pieces are,
Gotcha.
including like in the contract scene, there were a couple of jokes. Like Chico in the contract scene is supposed to say, I'm a stranger here myself. And Groucho says, "Aren't you Italian?" And Chico says, "No, I just look that way because my mother and father are Italian." But they took out any joke that made it clear that it was set in Italy, and that's obviously a World War II anti-fascist edit, But we all hope that eventually maybe that material that has been found in Hungary can be restored. It's a little bit depressing that it didn't happen with the recent restoration, but maybe there will be another opportunity. I also, if you don't mind, and I should be gracious enough to say thanks for having me on the first episode of your new show, guys.
I was wondering when you were going to say it. I've been waiting.
I waited far too long, but I'm glad you guys have launched this ship and honored to be on your first voyage. But I could throw in there is another Marx Brothers Blu-ray coming out less than a week from the day we're recording this on July 21st. iPop 3D is releasing the 3D conversion of Animal Crackers, which is really interesting. They did this with Coconuts last year. And as the Marx Brothers films enter the public domain, they'll keep doing this. iPop is a boutique conversion house in the UK that really does beautiful, handcrafted 3D conversions. Watching Coconuts in 3D last year was so interesting, and you realize, oh, not only is this not the kind of B-movie special effect we associate with traditional 3D, it feels a little more like what we want, which is seeing the Marx Brothers on stage. 3D films kind of give you the whole proscenium effect. And the Animal Crackers release that iPop is about to give to the world even has a commentary track recorded by Matthew Coniam and Bob Gassell and me, the three hosts of the Marx Brothers Council podcast. We've been wanting to do film commentaries for a long time, and so we're very excited that our first one is coming out. That's iPop 3D's Animal Crackers.
Well, congratulations on that.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
I brought my Blu-ray here.
Yeah. Well, it's a strange thing for me because I only have one good eye, so I can't see 3D, but I can listen to the commentary track, but I won't be able to see the movie in 3D.
Well, I promise you the commentary is very one-dimensional.
Well, there you go. So on that note, I guess we should get into our deep dive on horse feathers here, and that's the main thing. And I just want to go around again and ask you, when did you first see it? What do you remember about seeing it for the first time? Brian, do you want to start there?
I think I just got it from a now defunct rental store. Well, no, it may have been just a Blockbuster. Well, that's also defunct, but it was just like a day where just my dad and I rented that and Duck Soup and Monkey Business. Just all three, just did a whole dive on Paramount, Marx Brothers.
Well, that's a fun day.
Just watched them all on the same night.
Yeah. Oh, Anthony, what about you?
I'm sure I saw at least part of it way back when I was a kid, back in the 80s. But I remember, like, how should I say, like, when I bought the that Blu-ray set that Brian just showed, that's really when I revisited all of these films for the first time in a long time. Because there was a lot, and that was what, around 2000. That set came out maybe around 2018, 19, something like that.
I think maybe even a little earlier, 15.
A little 15? Okay. That's when I revisited them for the first time in maybe 20 years. It had been a long time. There was a period of time where I wasn't like really like watching a whole lot of stuff at home. So like a lot of the VHS that I had gotten, I just was sort of just sitting there. I was just always busy. I was like living in New York, basically trying to do basically what Noah has done. I've done, like we talked about in the Wheeler and Woolsey episode of mostly movies. I was, doing the acting thing, writing, just trying to get myself out there. I wasn't watching a whole lot of stuff. So I revisited these films, and my sort of ranking of them was different than I expected, But I loved Horse Feathers when I watched it, when I got that set, and loved it again when I watched it just yesterday for this recording. It's absolutely one of my favorite Marx Brothers films, easily.
Yeah. Well, Noah, we'll circle back around to you. What do you remember about seeing Horse Feathers for the first time?
A while. For some reason, when I was first seeking the Marx Brothers movies, and I too am, as I see it, lucky enough to be just old enough to have had kind of a hard time finding old movies when I was a kid, and those of us who lived through that inconvenience always seem to remember it so fondly because it was fun. The detective work of going through the checklist was great. And for some reason, Horse Feathers just wasn't on any of the shelves where I looked for Marx Brothers movies. They didn't have it at the library. It wasn't one of the Marx Brothers movies that they had at the video store near me when home video entered our lives. I never seemed to catch it on television, even though, like all of us, I looked at every page of every TV guide trying to find Marx Brothers movies. And so I did finally track it down on VHS, but it was the last one that I saw. It was the last one I ever saw for the first time. Mm-hmm. And that was so lucky. I now realize how great that was, because it is one of the best, and now to the extent that rankings or favorites have any validity, I think Horse Feathers is my second favorite Marx Brothers movie. I really like it a lot. It's one of the best in my view. And how wonderful that I had suffered through At the Circus and Go West and Love Happy, and there was still such a good one waiting for me at the end of the road, and I think possibly for that reason, it still feels a little fresher to me than the others, Like, I still haven't, because I got a later start with Horse Feathers, if I've seen Animal Crackers 5,000 times, I've only seen Horse Feathers 4,000 times. So it's relatively fresh.
Yeah. And, well, for myself, and this is, I don't know, I could make it a long story, but I just, I'll see. I don't want to take up too much time away from you guys, but I'll see what I can say here. That my father brought Horse Feathers home on VHS from the library when I was about 9 years old. And that was, the reason I chose it is because it's meaningful to me, because that movie really gave me my sense of humor and inspired me to be a comedy writer. That's really the short version, because I don't think I had much of a sense of humor when I was a kid, and then when I saw that movie, that's when the light switch went on, and I realized, oh, okay, this is joke structure, and that's how you make a joke, and you twist the meaning of a word to make it mean something else, and now I understand the mechanics of what this is, and so that was inspiring. And as you guys know, I'm a comedy writer. I've done some work as an actor in theater and on radio, and so on, and all of that really came from Horse Feathers, so it's still kind of an emotional experience to me when I see it now, because I can remember being a little boy watching this movie, and here I am 30 years later still watching it. And the other thing, and then I'll see if I can stop talking and let you guys talk, but I'm from Pennsylvania, so I went to a Quaker school when I was a kid, and it was this very kind of conservative place that didn't have much of a sense of humor. And it was just very liberating to me, especially because it was a school setting with Horse Feathers. I didn't understand college, but I understood school. And I saw, here are these crazy guys breaking all the rules that I was being taught to follow, and I realized that there's another way to look at the world. You don't have to follow all the rules, and you can kind of take your own path in life. And I think philosophically that's what I got from that movie, is that there's just, it was like The Wizard of Oz. When Dorothy opens the door and it goes from black and white to color, I realized there's this other way of looking at life that is opening to me, and I think that's about as profound as I'm going to get today. But, that's what Horse Feathers means to me, and that's why I chose it. So I hope I'm not boring you with that.
Not at all, Professor. You're full of whimsy.
I'm always that way after I eat radishes. So anyway, that's here I am 30 years later still talking about this movie that had an effect on me. So that's my story. And I think I kind of disappeared for a minute there, but now I'm back into my serious podcast hosting mode. But I have some notes and questions that I want to bring in, but I want to just open it up because I know you guys have notes. And so, Noah, why don't I go back to you again? I know you've done other podcasts about Horse Feathers, but is there anything fresh that comes to mind that you want to bring up?
Well, when I see Horse Feathers lately, one of the things that is very much on my mind that I don't think used to be is, I mentioned earlier that I think it's roughly my second favorite. I was thinking yesterday, looking at it again, I think the reason Horse Feathers is my second favorite Marx Brothers movie is because Animal Crackers is my favorite. And Horse Feathers is very connected to Animal Crackers. It's kind of the movie where the Marx Brothers say, not consciously, I don't think they thought this way, but in effect they are saying, monkey business was an interesting experiment. Here we are in Hollywood, so why don't we try making a movie? But we're going to go back to doing what we did on stage. And it's only through discussing Monkey Business on the Marx Brothers Council podcast that I've come to realize what an experimental movie it really is. Now, Monkey Business really starts fresh after a lot that's established in Coconuts and Animal Crackers and on stage gets kind of jettisoned, you know. And in Monkey Business, the Marx Brothers are a unit of four guys right from the beginning. They know each other. They don't have character names. They're not part of the system. Groucho's not an authority figure. You know, it really throws out the formula and
Yes.
to beautiful effect. I mean, I love Monkey Business too, of course, and it worked very nicely. But Horse Feathers is really like, okay, it's kind of like their Nevermind movie. All right, never mind all that. We're going to go back to what we did before. We're going to start with a musical number, basically back to musical comedy. Back that opening scene in Horse Feathers is, you know, the opening of a Broadway show, a
Yeah.
musical number for its own sake. Um, and Groucho in a role, Harpo and Chico on the outskirts of the culture that Groucho is ascendant within. Now they are still making a movie. You know, Horse Feathers eventually gets to running around on a football field. Obviously, you wouldn't do that on stage.
Maybe you wouldn't.
I definitely wouldn't. The canoe scene is another example. You know,
Yeah.
there's actually more outdoor location photography of the Marx Brothers in Horse Feathers than I think there is in any of their other films. Maybe Go West, you know, if you.
You're right.
But I mean, you know, in many ways, though, structurally, it's back to the stage, back to Animal Crackers, back to musical numbers. I think that's one of the things I love about it.
Yeah. Well, there's another question I had for you, and then I'll turn it over to the other guys. But since you've done so much research into the Marx Brothers stage work, what's your sense of how much of the material on Horse Feathers is reused from their earlier shows?
There is a good deal of that. I think Horse Feathers and Monkey Business are both very connected to I'll Say She Is, the first of the Marx Brothers three Broadway shows. One reason for that is that Will B. Johnstone, who was the librettist and lyricist of I'll Say She Is, worked on both screenplays. So that's one reason he kind of stole from himself a little bit. And then another reason, I think, is that Coconuts and Animal Crackers were made into movies. So a lot of the material from those two shows wound up, obviously, in the film adaptations. But there was kind of more I'll Say She Is material still lying around unused. And for that reason, a lot of gags pop up in the Monkey Business and Horse Feathers. I mean, in Coconuts and Animal Crackers too.
Yeah.
But for example, Cut the Cards, that's one of the most celebrated gags in Horse Feathers. That's an I'll Say She Is joke. The whole scene in Thelma Todd's apartment is very descended from the Napoleon scene, and some specific jokes are too. Yeah, and there's other examples like that.
Was there anything from Fun in High School or things that far back that they used?
I'm not aware of any specific gags, but definitely the whole conceit. I mean, the classroom stuff in Horse Feathers is often cited as being a throwback to the schoolroom routine that the brothers did in vaudeville, in Fun in High School and Mr. Green's Reception. And so I don't know that the specific jokes come from that era, but the whole idea of Groucho as the teacher and Harpo and Chico as the difficult students is clearly not the first time they played that card.
Or cut those cards?
Or cut those cards.
Yes. Well, yeah, as I say, I have other questions here, but I want to throw it over to just open the floor a bit here. So, Brian, I know you had some notes. What's on your mind?
Yeah. I'm trying to think. I don't know if I'd rank this was maybe one of my absolute favorites because I hate to say it, I've never seen the whole movie. You know?
Did you watch the whole movie for this?
No, I can't.
Really?
There's no way to.
Oh, I
It
see.
doesn't exist.
Oh, I see what you mean.
Cuts, yeah, yeah.
Like he's talking about the bedroom scene with Thelma Todd. I mean, I can't. It's just edits all over the place. I mean, it's like I don't know. You know, there's missing punchlines. There's missing stuff. I mean, I don't know fully what really happened in the film. So I don't. You know, that's where the production code kicks into this, and it's what you know. That's where it's devious to me because it's one thing to script doctor at that stage of it at the production stage, but when you have like reissues and then they start editing stuff after it's already been made, that's where I always had a problem with what the code did.
Yeah.
And, you know, he mentioned the schoolroom bit. How did that survive intact? like with the white phagocytes line and all. Like, how did that survive? I'm amazed at that one. Actually, I mean, I know that it's a double meaning kind of, but you know what I mean. Like, I always wonder how that one survived any kind of reissue edits.
Well, I was going to get a flat bottom, but the girl at the boathouse didn't have one. How did the code let that slip through? I wonder.
Well, I think part of the answer here is that it's they're actually not censorship cuts in the apartment scene, although there may also be some of that. But those cuts are seem to be a combination of just damage, just damage to the print, and the theory is that whatever print of horse feathers was making the rounds, and that all existing home video prints wound up being struck from, might have been rated for some kind of Harpo tribute because everything that's missing from that scene is Harpo material. And so maybe somebody at some point was making some kind of Harpo highlight reel, and took out all the Harpo and Thelma Todd stuff. Yeah, it is true that whenever Horse Feathers is discussed, that mangled scene is always a point of consternation.
Well, but Brian's right though that if what we have is a post-code reissue, there's still a lot of risque stuff that they left in.
Right, and like the joke about like I'm the plumber, I'm here to see what's wrong with her pipes.
Yeah.
Like that joke is a little mangled because of the damaged print, but it still comes across.
Yeah.
So I don't think we can. Although I'd be happy to blame the Hayes Code. I don't think
Always.
I don't think that is the Hayes Code. I think that is just how what poor care was taken of vintage movies at mid-century.
Well, Brian, what else?
Well, I mean, this is kind of goes into a different. Is anybody else's favorite brother Chico?
Trav SD. Do you guys know Trav?
I don't know him
believe
personally, but I know who he is.
I believe Chico is his favorite, but it is an unusual choice.
Yeah, I do love Chico, but maybe not as much as Groucho.
Well, my basis for this is that like he is unbelievably versatile in what he does. Because if you take away him, there is no act. There's no. I mean, you have nobody to like work with Harpo and kind of like rein in like his complete lunacy and like act as his straight man while also acting as the funny man for Groucho.
Right.
While Groucho
Absolutely.
acts as his straight man. Like he does both of those within the drop of a dime within like 5 minutes of screen time. It's uncanny to me watching his work.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. They need him there.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Followed by complete silence, so I guess we...
Yeah, 100%. I couldn't agree more. And
Yeah, no, it's 1,000%. Yeah, no,
yeah,
you're absolutely right.
yeah. And anyone who does tell if Chico is your favorite Marx brother, that is that rank that puts you in the very top rank of Marx Brothers fans, in my opinion. That because you're right. Without Chico, there is no act, and specifically without Chico, the two Marx Brothers who are more commonly named as people's favorites lose half their powers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, this is the awkward silence show, I see.
well, yeah. Let me think about it. I think if he's disrespected at all, I think it's mostly because of his. People could probably look at that as the phony Italian thing is kind of like on the surface a bit of a one note thing compared to the other two main ones anyway. So, but then, like if you delve in a little bit further, you see what all he can do as a performer more. I think, and that's what I was thinking. Anyway, Anthony, what do you have here? What do you think?
For me, this movie is, I mean, this one is to me like Duck Soup as a film may be the one I prefer, but this is like really just my number two. Um, this movie has such great momentum. The film doesn't, it's one gem of a sequence after another, and we're just laughing and we're loving the musical numbers. I mean, Woody Allen loved everyone says I love you so much that he named titled one of his films that, and that
Yep.
entire film is a tribute to this era of Hollywood. Um, the movie stops only for Harpo's solo, and that's about 43 minutes into it, and where we're finally like there's just sort of peace on earth for a little bit before we ram right back into insanity with that final act in the football game. I just really love this movie. I think Groucho and Harpo in this film are, for me, are pitched perfectly
Yeah.
because there are times where, and I know I'm in the minority here. There are times where in Animal Crackers and Monkey Business, for me, they're a little too overbearing. And I like that here they're pitched just right. Harpo's lunacy is mystifying to people, but it's not irritating, like it's not like people are more mystified by him, like what, like in the scene with the cut the cards, this, they let him in to the speakeasy because he knows the password, and then they just let him be a lunatic like all over the
Yeah.
speakeasy. No one even pays attention. He asks for a drink of scotch, and then he's got the little, his lunacy is just, free reign there, and they're all kind of cool with him. They're just like, oh, here's this guy again. I love that. Groucho is pitched perfect because the anarchy is kind of coming back on him. I mean, even the way he is with his own son, it's like, oh man, like he's just so like rude and whatever. But it's funny, but also Zeppo's so used to it that he just goes with it. So I just love how Groucho and Harpo are pitched in this one. Chico, like Brian said, is fantastic. Another thing I want to say about this movie, again, watching it yesterday, is it's almost like the filmmakers had a crystal ball into Vietnam era America, because that whole opening scene, you can see why college kids in the late 60s and early 70s were against the war, and were against sort of like, the sort of traditional thought, traditional ideas, traditional way of doing things. That opening scene where Groucho's like, anything these guys say behind me, I'm against it. Like, you can just see why college students loved it. The scene where Harpo is literally shoving old ideas into the fireplace, those books. Again, I know, I did read that Alan Iles felt that that was an unfortunate scene because of the whole book burning during, by the Nazis in the 40s. But the way I looked at it yesterday, and probably maybe the way the college kids looked at it in the 60s and early 70s, was him, sort of like pitching, all of these old ideas and theories into a fire and getting rid of them. So there was so much in this film, watching it yesterday, where I was like, I can see why college kids loved this during the Vietnam era, all those kids that were out there protesting. I totally get it. And there was so, it's like I said, so much of that resonated with me. I love that the film's called Horse Feathers, and throughout the film, horses keep showing up. They're in the animated sequence in during the titles. Harpo's feeding a horse is carrying his dog cart, right? Um, the horse whip joke that Groucho has, I'd horse whip you if I had a horse, but I don't have a horse. And then, of course, horses carry the winning goal at the end of uh, at the end of the football game. So I like how horses also play a part throughout the film. Um, there's just so much about this movie that I really enjoyed, and I also caught two gags that we would see in other films later. Um, the lifesaver scene
Oh,
shows up in Abbott and Costello, Naughty 90s, and you have the brain of a 4-year-old kid. I'm sure he was glad to get rid of it. Pops
yep.
up in the Nitwits with Wheeler and Woolsey.
Oh, that's right.
So, but yeah, there's just so many things. I've got my notes here. I'm sort of glancing at as I'm talking, but Zeppo, I know he's bland, but he's so likable and sweet in this movie. When he's sitting
Yes.
next, after he brings her breakfast in bed, he's sitting next to her singing the everyone says I love you song. It's just such a nice sweet moment. I just got the feeling like he would have been. I know Harpo. A lot of the people said Harpo was the nicest Marx brother off camera, but Zeppo seems like he was pretty chill, pretty cool guy too. Um, I love how Harpo's hat changes from dog catcher to kidnapper
Right.
when he goes after the two, Matt Pendleton and the other guy. And I like how Pendleton and I think was it James Pierce, I think
Yeah.
the other actor's name, and
James Pierce.
David
Yeah.
Landau and the villains in the film are very sort of this world. They're not of the kind of lunatic universe. They're very straight,
Right.
and I like that too. It plays well against all of the anarchy going on. So those are just some things that I wrote down. And this movie just really, really works for me. I think if there was anything that, because maybe because it's so 1930s, but I almost wish in the opening scene, it's fun, but I almost wish that the Groucho number, the professors didn't join in and they were sort of irritated with him. I think that would have been made more of a point, but it's fun to watch the number. You know what I mean? That was like the one thing I was like, I almost wish they didn't join in with the musical number, not be part of his work kind of world, his viewpoint,
Mm.
but that's so minor. It's a 1930s musical. They're gonna have like a big sort of they're gonna they're gonna incorporate everyone they can. So, but no, I mean, I just really, really enjoy this film. This is one that of all the Marx Brothers movies, I think this is the one that I would introduce to someone who's never seen them. I
Yeah.
think they would really get a kick. You know, Duck Soup may be the masterpiece, right? That everyone turns to and the critics hail, but the whole thing to me is just a shade darker because of the war thing and the political thing. I mean, that's fine, and I'm fine with that. But I think to someone new to them, Horse Feathers is like the one to show.
Yeah.
Everything's so light; it just sort of prances along, which, yeah, just works so well.
Yeah. Well, you're giving us a lot to think about there.
I got.
Oh, go ahead.
I will ask, are Mullen and McCarty really villains, though?
Well, they're kind of nasty
Yeah.
to
Yeah, they're kind
Chico.
of like the
They're just
tough
guys trying to
guy,
get some
the
help out of here. I mean,
I have an easier time
yeah,
accepting them as villains than as college students.
oh yeah. Well,
yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
the whole plot of this movie is funny. I can't help but think, looking at this now in the days of NIL money in college sports, that these guys are. I kind of wonder, like, who precisely is Jennings in this movie? Like who is he? Like, is he just a gambler, or is he like a booster for Darwin?
For the other school.
What exactly is his
yeah,
narrative role? It's never really entirely explained, I don't think.
One thing we keep
yeah,
running into with this movie is that um, it's really a spoof of college pictures of the
Right.
20s and 30s. That's a significant dimension of the film that doesn't really come across to us now. And if you watch those films, that entire genre of college, like campus comedies, that begin in the silent era and just barely continue into the Depression. A lot of the things in Horse Feathers that are just kind of inscrutable to us turn out to be references. The idea of a fur coat being an accessory for a college boy. Like, why does Groucho give Chico a fur coat in that scene? It's so random. It seems like absurdist humor. Actually, that's what college kids wore. Cheap fur coats was the only
Right.
way to stay warm in the winter when you were a starving college student. And the whole idea of the college widow, which just is a non sequitur, like we don't even know what that means anymore. But there's a whole play by George Ade called The College Widow, which was adapted for film. And, and I think the whole idea of these underworld characters, Jennings and Mullen and McCarty, scandals behind college football, I think all of this felt very familiar to the 1932 audience. The same way, if we go to see a spoof movie now, we're kind of aware of the targets. It's remarkable that the Marx Brothers, when they did parodies, their brilliance made it totally irrelevant whether you got the reference or not. I mean, the greatest example of this is the strange interlude scene in Animal Crackers.
Right.
You know, the number of people who have laughed at that scene without even any inkling of the play Strange Interlude by Eugene O'Neill is overwhelming. The parody has totally transcended its original target. But that is an explanation for some of this stuff. Horse Feathers also has this, we sort of understand that part of the reason we all love the Marx Brothers is because they have this intersection of high and low art. The Marx Brothers are, on one hand, they have this literary side. They were beloved by sophisticates. They were considered satirists and intellectual. I don't have to belabor that point. They're also capable of the absolute lowest knockabout physical comedy, and by combining those high and low elements, they manage to please a larger audience than they might otherwise have appealed to. And I think Horse Feathers might be the movie that has like the most equal servings of those two sides of them. Like Animal Crackers is maybe a little more on their sophisticated, Algonquin Round Table side. And perhaps as the films progress into the later years, well, even Monkey Business. In Monkey Business, Groucho does a lot of literary humor and a lot of wordplay, but Monkey Business also has, more of what we might call slapstick in it. I think Horse Feathers is a pretty square meal as far as the high and low instincts of the Marx Brothers.
Mm-hmm.
Well, when there was like a window of
Yeah, and oh, go ahead.
I was gonna say there was like a window of like when they first went Hollywood. After the first two they did, which were just like at the Paramount New York studio. Though, like you could tell that that's like you're watching film theater basically in the first two movies. And then by the time they went to MGM, it felt like to me I could tell more that they're rehearsed. Yeah, even like the best
Oh
stuff, like
yeah.
the first part or the $2 on Sun Up. Like all these routines, you could tell they really rehearsed those.
Yeah.
Like with those three they did in the early 30s, I'm just watching madness in those movies. Yeah, I mean, I don't feel like there's anything being like it was probably rehearsed, no doubt. But I mean, I feel like I'm watching just spontaneous, like the bit about in this movie about the chauffeur bit, which is
Yeah.
one of my favorite parts of this movie. I love that. So I mean, it just seems like they just randomly said that stuff rather than rehearsed it. Does anybody see the difference that I'm talking about? I guess. I
Yeah.
don't
Yeah, and
Oh
you're
yeah.
absolutely right. I mean, Coconuts and Animal Crackers, they had done hundreds of times on stage. And as I'm sure you know, starting with The Night at the Opera, they would go on tour and test the material in front of an audience. So, Monkey Business, Horse Feathers, and Duck Soup, those are the three films in their good years where they had never done the material before. It had never been tested in front of an audience. And the chauffeur thing in Horse Feathers, I think it was written and rehearsed, but they probably did it a few times, got it down, and then did it for the cameras. Whereas the Wyandotte scene in Coconuts, by the time they do that for the cameras, they've already done it like more than 1,000 times.
Right.
Yeah, and they're brothers, so I think their chemistry is just so great. I mean, they're so Groucho and Chico in that scene, right? They're just in each other's faces, like, well, wouldn't you, and it's just perfect. Yeah, I mean, that's another scene that was fantastic. One thing that to piggyback off of what Noah was saying about being a college film is when I was in college, I loved college so much, and that was a time when I was always my mind was always like coming up with ideas for films or for even like pieces of dialogue or scenes. And like I remember when I was in college and film school and then visiting friends in college, I always felt like a college was the perfect setting for a film, whether it's comedy, drama, or whatever. And I to this day I have a love for films set in college universities. I always thought it would be interesting to work at a college, and when I lived in Arkansas for 2 years, I actually did work in a college for a year, in the business department, and to see just because I was always what would it be like to work in one, and so this film also sort of has a leg up for me because it's set in a college and it is so well done. There's so much it uses the college setting so well throughout. So yeah, I mean that was something else that I wanted to throw out there was I love films set uh in a college. It's just, and I also wanted to mention real quick the reason I'm wearing my old Alice Cooper shirt. Back in New York, I was a big fan of metal and hard rock. I used to go to all the shows, is because I know Groucho and Alice Cooper were pretty good friends.
Mm-hmm.
And I know toward the end of his life, Groucho sort of considered Alice Cooper's stage show to be kind of like vaudeville, sort of updated into the 1970s. So that's my reasoning for wearing uh, shirt from about 26 years ago that I got at a concert 26 years ago on Halloween night in New York City.
Oh.
So yeah,
Not bad. Still fits.
still fits. Still fits a little big, but still fits. Yeah.
So one thing I wanted to bring in because we started out with the Wheeler and Woolsey podcast. Do you want to talk a little bit about the connections between horse feathers and Hold'em jail?
Uh, yeah, I know. Well, I that was another thing that I did notice when I watched Horse Feather yesterday was they're not the same gags, but you can kind of see that the same mind, S.J. Perlman, wrote the same football gags for both climaxes of both films. They're not the same gags, but they have the same feel. Like you could see that maybe, he could have written one for taken a little bit here, put a little bit in there. They have the same feel to them, which is fine. But that's what I noticed the most between the two. And of course, yeah, like the whole bet, like there's a bet on the game. So we need this team to win. And so when they grab Bert and Bob and hold them in jail, and this Groucho accidentally grabs Chico and Harpo, thinking they're the two players that Zeppo was talking about. So yeah, no, there are definitely similarities in the narrative and then in the climax, in the gags, certainly in both.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Hold'em Jail as an entire film is like a metaphor, I guess. Like it's like a spoof of college stuff if college was prison, you know. But
Yeah.
that's you know, which one? I wonder which climactic football game you think's better.
Hmm.
I'm torn on that one.
Yeah, me too.
I think
Oh,
they both have the same continuity weirdness though, where it's like somebody scores and then they get the ball right back. That's always bothered me
yeah.
with those movies, where somebody scores and then they just get the kickoff again. It's very strange.
You mean that's not how it works?
Haven't seen Hold'em Jail, but I will admit my attention tends to wander during the climactic football game in Horse Feathers. I mean, I like a lot of the individual gags. I especially love Groucho in the announcer's booth
Yeah.
with what do you call that whistle that Bob Dylan does at the top of Highway 61? It's not a slide whistle.
Yeah,
What do you call that spinning whistle that goes whee? Anyway,
yeah,
he's really funny
yeah.
with that whistle and the Mrs. Moskowitz gag. But I do think I don't know, something about that sequence. It just feels like it sort of falls apart. Also,
Yeah.
it's hindered a little bit by Chico's injury. Chico is so obviously replaced by a double in all the action shots. I always find that a little distracting.
Yeah, that was another question I had in my notes, whether there are any bits in the movie that don't work for you. Is there anything? Because I think I can agree with you, Noah, that it does tend to run out of steam a little bit by the finale. But is there anything else that you would point to that doesn't quite work?
It's like specific individual gags.
Or whatever comes to mind, yeah.
Uh, there are certainly gags that don't work. I mean, there's a little bit of a mistake. You could call it a mistake that I absolutely love
I
in
think
the
I know what
movie.
you're going to say.
Yeah, it's that it takes a little too long for Harpo to get that seal onto the desk
Yeah,
the scene in Groucho's office, and so Groucho and Chico they just keep doing the straight line until
yeah,
Harpo can get the seal in place. So they just where's the seal? Where's the seal? Where's the seal? It just they just go on. They go around in circles too many times, and if they were consummate perfectionists, they would have taken that again. For all we know, that was the 10th and best of many rough tries when you're working with a live seal. But to me, that's a lovely moment. You see the Marx Brothers just slightly panicking.
yeah. Well, Brian or Anthony, anything that doesn't quite work for you in this?
Um, dare I say some of Groucho's opening scene?
Oh, that's blasphemy.
Well, I mean, before like the number starts, I mean,
Yeah, I mean, I love that
I just
stuff, but go
watching it
ahead.
again. I'm just watching it. I was like, he's bouncing the lines off the other professors, and I'm just he kind of just more comes off like a dick rather than like me. I don't know if I was laughing at it as much as I used to. Maybe I don't know.
You think he goes
And
too
then
far?
like some of them were working, but some of them I just like I kind of wondered why they were taking it. Oh, and I'm trying to think. I finally, by the way, after all these years, I finally looked up what does waxing Roth mean.
Yeah.
It took me forever before I finally looked that up to figure. I mean, I already kind of had an idea what it meant. You can infer it really, but I finally looked up. It just means somebody's really, really, really mad, you know. But
Yeah. I
Yeah,
use that expression all the time.
Joe Adamson says only S.J. Perlman would think that that's any way to say he's angry. Waxing Roth. There are some things in Horse Feathers that are just uh, incongruous, inscrutable. I don't know that they're errors, but they're also not especially funny. They're just kind of weird. You know, a lot of scenes that just sort of end abruptly in the middle
Right.
of action. Um,
Well,
you
and
know, there's a lot about the movie that feels very sketched in. You know,
well, I was going to say, Adamson talks about that, where they had endings to a lot of the scenes, but they just didn't use them.
they clipped off the endings. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. There are other examples occurred to me when I was watching it. Now that I could appear very coherent by naming them, I'm blanking. But there's a lot of that in the movie, or just things that don't quite, you know, that don't fully add up or work. Uh,
But I guess it's to its credit that we love the movie anyway.
well, sure, yeah, and maybe ultimately that's good. I mean, it's often discussed as the most surreal and the weirdest of the Marx Brothers films. I think that's one reason. I mean, things like the professors addressing Groucho in unison in that office scene. You know, like even in other Marx Brothers movies, we never get that kind of thing. Like the heavy saying, you know, yes, indeed, the professor is right, and they're speaking in perfect unison. It's almost too easy. These guys are fish in a barrel for Groucho.
well, and by the way, when I say this in the opening scene, I mean like he's hitting like a substantial amount of these lines anyway. A lot of these are connecting, but there's some of them that I don't know if I liked as much as I used to. Maybe I did. I don't know. I can't remember.
See, I think that I like the opening scene. I think like right off the bat when we first see Groucho, his back is turned, he's shaving as if he couldn't be bothered to get up early enough to shave before showing up to this event. Like he's just like, oh man, do I have to deal with this today? And so his attitude right off the bat is just ah. So for me, all of that opening works, you know, because
I,
you know, it's like he's like ah.
I will say
Yeah, I guess I have to give a speech, you know,
this
like,
is my dad's favorite Zeppo moment. And his opening line, "Hello, old timer."
Hello, old
oh
timer.
yeah, yeah,
Love that
yeah.
moment. That's like
Which is that's an example of the weirdness, the way those two shots of Zeppo are reversed. Like the hello old timer thing, that should come first. And then Groucho should do the get off his lap so I can see the sunrise. You know, and then the young lady gets off Zeppo's lap and he stands up. But the two shots are reversed. Like the movie is constantly, you know, upsetting our sense of continuity in little ways like that. I think if you switch those shots, it would make more sense. But they did that for some reason. Also, how about that? The shaving. You know, it's like a dress rehearsal for Duck Soup. In Duck Soup, when Groucho is due to arrive, he's still in bed, and he comes down the fire pole. You know, it's like they
Yeah,
turned it up a notch. In Horse Feathers,
yeah.
they caught him in the middle of shaving. Maybe it'd be even funnier if he's still in bed when his entrance is announced. And the football scene feels a little bit like a rehearsal for the war in Duck Soup too. Even some of the specific things Groucho says.
I could see that.
The one thing I, the one thing I'll say, I know you guys all mentioned the football game and how it's not quite, it doesn't pop as well as the rest of the sequences in the rest of the film. I did, even though I enjoyed the football game, I will say by the time we get there, the film does have an air of we've been talking about this game the entire film, we might as well show it. It doesn't, you know, so it does feel like we're there just because they've talked about it throughout the whole film, not because like it was like the event that we had to see to climax the film, you know? So I get that feeling a little bit. Yeah, I can
I was
understand.
I kind of cracked up at like the whole idea of Jennings wanting to like so hard like trying to like fix this game. But given how horrible Huxley is as a football program, like apparently they hadn't won anything since 1888 or whatever. I mean, like why are
Yeah,
you just beat? They're going to win anyway. I mean, you know,
yeah.
you're hiring like ringer guys off the street and all this stuff. They end up losing anyway. You know, I wonder what their team's records were. I want to know this. Did either of these teams end up bowl eligible?
Well, I've got a lot of records on the shelf behind me there, but I don't think that's one of them.
I think
But
Anthony mentioned it earlier, but isn't it sweet the way each brother gets a shot at the love
the
theme
song,
from
Yeah.
Horse
yeah,
Feathers?
yeah, I love that. I love that. I forgot about that because it has been a few years since I watched it. I forgot that each one got a turn, and I loved. Like I said, I was really charmed by Zeppo's because I was like, I know people always slag him off, and he's the blandest, but he has a sweetness in the little bit he's able to do in this film, the
Yeah.
little bit he's given. It really is like cute, you know?
It's a little bit like the Maurice Chevalier impressions in Monkey Business,
Mm,
and those impressions in that theatrical manager scene. It's like Zeppo first does the straight version, so you see how it's supposed to
yeah,
go, and then each
right.
of the other brothers gets to do their specific comic
Right.
version.
Yeah, yeah. Chico on the piano, then of course Harpo. Like I said, where the film slows down, and then What I love about the Groucho scene, that was another thing, was I love how when she starts all the baby talk, he's just disgusted by it. You know, he's not like honey. He's like, please stop talking like that. You're just irritating me. I love that, and I love how the song ends because of a duck quack. And of course, the next film is Duck Soup. You know, that
Right.
was really cool. I was like, oh, the last time we hear the song is ended by a duck, and Groucho tosses a guitar at it, and it eats the plays.
Yeah.
And then the next film is Duck Soup. I was like, ah, it's very appropriate. I doubt anyone thought about that at the time, but I was like, that's cool. I like
Well,
that.
there's a duck thing. I mean, there's the why a duck and coconuts,
Yeah,
and then
yeah,
later
yeah, yeah.
the duck on You Bet Your Life.
Yes, of
Ducks have
course,
some
absolutely.
power in this universe, like horses.
Yes.
Also, and across the films, Harpo's kind of got this vaguely sexual interest in horses that's never quite explained.
That's right. He
Orson,
even puts the horse up. The poster of the horse, replaces the body,
Right.
the anatomy in the classroom. Yeah,
he had his
yeah,
horse,
that
whatever.
too.
A picture of the horse at Animal Crackers as well. So
Yeah,
Right.
Yeah, yeah, and
and in Duck Soup, he sleeps with a horse in the Paul
yes,
Revere scene,
yes.
or I guess I should say he is discovered in bed with a horse.
Yes. Well, I guess that'll be Matthew's next book, right? Animals in the Marx Brothers movies will be the next theme. I had a question and now I've forgotten it. So, what else have we got?
Well, that is a
well,
question.
I'm going to say something that nobody has ever said. Let's talk about Zeppo more.
Sure.
Yes.
Do you feel like that there was more they could have done with him? Because I feel like that maybe in like the first two movies he could have been like that romantic lead
Yeah.
more than like just the thankless Jameson role. I wonder what was the rationale? Why was he such a small part in those stage adaptations? I mean, I read that he was like kind of like veering that he was there as a replacement guy or something if somebody was sick or on stage maybe.
Oh, well, he sometimes did understudy for the other brothers, but I don't think it was the main reason he was around. He replaced Gummo, who was the older. Gummo was the next older brother between Groucho and Zeppo, and Gummo. The four Marx Brothers act was Groucho, Harpo, Chico, and Gummo. And Gummo left the act around World War One because one of them had to join the army. Gummo never had to serve overseas, as it turned out, but he left the act and he wasn't terribly interested in being in the act. So I think part of it was that Zeppo was the baby brother, and he inherited a role in the act that was already kind of the lesser brother. And Minnie, their mother and manager, wanted to keep the name, the four Marx Brothers, intact. That was one reason. Also, Zeppo, as a child, was like a borderline juvenile delinquent, and I think Minnie felt that putting him in the act was the best way to keep an eye on him and keep him out of jail. So he was kind of in the act for reasons other than being talented or wanting to be a big star. And by the time Zeppo was in the act, his three older brothers were already so established in their characters. He would have had to start all over from scratch and compete with these guys who were already old pros. I think Monkey Business and Horse Feathers do give Zeppo a little bit more to do than he has in the three other movies he made with his brothers. But one of the reasons he's never um, the love interest in Coconuts or Animal Crackers is because the as strange as this seems now, the guys who played the love interests in those movies were stars, you know, with marquee value. And so, like when we watch Coconuts now, Oscar Shaw, we just kind of struggle through his his screen time. He doesn't strike us now as a charismatic star. But Oscar Shaw was a big deal in 1929 and had his name above the title too. And you know, not casting Alan Jones in A Night at the Opera would be losing significant marquee value.
Do you have some idea of why Oscar Shaw was so popular?
I guess it's partly that men seem to suffer more than women with passing time. You look at the biggest female stars of past eras, for the most part, they still seem beautiful, charismatic, and glamorous to us. But you look at the leading men of past eras, it's a little, pickings are a little slimmer. Not that there weren't handsome, dynamic, romantic leading men, but the chances are slimmer, I think, that those guys still read as manly, romantic, charismatic figures. And then also, nobody knew how to make a movie. I'll bet Oscar Shaw was far more charming on Broadway than he is in the Coconuts film. Even the Marx Brothers are a little awkward in that movie because it was a totally new medium. They'd never played to a silent room before, you know. So we can let Oscar Shaw off the hook a little bit, but I think that there is a commercial reason why Zeppo wasn't given more of a chance to be like the male ingenue in their pictures.
Yeah, Oscar Shaw, he was like the 42-year-old guy playing like the lead, the juvenile dying of old age from Gold Digger from 1973. Yeah.
That's right. Yeah, Simon, I think it's Simon Luvish in his book about the brothers. He says, as if everything else wasn't bad enough about Oscar Shaw, he even looks like Nixon. I mean, there's just no no chance for this guy.
Marion Nixon. Well, I want to jump around again because I remembered what my earlier question was, which was I want to just go to the opposite of what I asked before. Are there any jokes in Horse Feathers that are a little underrated? Is there anything that hit you more watching the film this time that you hadn't really caught before, or jokes that people don't quote as much?
Well, I already mentioned the chauffeur routine is one of my favorites, and I
Yeah,
never hear anybody ever talk about it.
I love
So,
that. Yeah.
what else was
The one there's really not, but one thing that I'm glad you asked that question because it reminded me of something. I did a play. I was 19 years old. Neil Simon, it was Neil Simon's Rumors. I was the youngest person in it. Everyone else was from 26 to like in their 50s. And I still remember there were these three guys who were in their 50s who grew up in New York on Marx Brothers movies. And when we were in the dressing room backstage, they would always be hammering out classic routines from Abbott and Costello, from Peter Sellers, the Inspector Clouseau films, the Pink Panther. And they would always hammer out the entire swordfish sequence between Groucho and Chico. Like when we were in the dressing room before the show, they would always be going back and forth. Yeah, it's the password swordfish. I'll come out there with you. That entire thing, they would just go on and on about. So that was something that like, and I remember being 19, and I was like, oh yeah, the Marx Brothers, and they were like astounded that I knew. I was like, oh yeah, I grew up on all that stuff. And funny enough, the person closest in age to me in that place, she was 26 at the time. This is back in 1999. Was a woman whose name was Julie Allen. She was Steve Allen's granddaughter.
Oh,
And she was amazed that I knew who Steve Allen was. And I'm like, I grew up on all this stuff in the, I was 5 years old and I knew. So yeah, just a quick aside there. But that's a routine that, like I said, I remember those guys just hammering out like before every performance, in the dressing room.
yeah.
but is Swordfish really underrated though? I mean, it's probably the most famous thing in the movie, isn't it?
I don't
No,
think.
no, I didn't mean underrated. Just as far as the routines go, to me, I don't know if there's really anything underrated. I don't know. The film just works so well for me, and I don't know. I'm probably just a little out of the loop with whether or not what, when people talk about the film, what they maybe dog a little bit. Just so much of this movie works for me, you know.
Yeah. Noah,
Is
anything
there
from you?
anything? Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, I was about to ask you if you had a response to the question.
Oh, well, I was just about to tell you that I do not. Yeah, I don't, it is a little. I'm feeling a little bit of what Anthony is expressing. Like it's hard to think of material in Horse Feathers that's underrated because it is such a well loved movie among Marx Brothers fans. But sometimes, as with other of the best Marx Brothers movies, there are gags that go by so quickly you don't notice them. And on a certain viewing, you might just notice a gag that sort of gets
Yeah.
buried most of the time. Um, you know, and there are also moments that on early viewings, it's not like that they're such spectacular jokes. You wouldn't point to them as like, this is why the Marx Brothers are great. But there's something about them that just appeals to me enormously and that appeals more with repeated viewings. And one such moment is in the classroom scene. What do you think of that slide? Groucho looks into the microscope very seriously, and the professor says, what do you think of that slide? And Groucho says, well, I think he was safe at second, but it was very close. Something about the tone of Groucho's voice when he does that joke, I just love that. It's just, it's like he's so fluid. Groucho doesn't waste a second before, first of all, transforming the very serious question into a straight line. Second of all, introducing a low concept into a room full of high concepts. I mean, it's just like, it just encapsulates everything. I also didn't notice, or I'm sure I did notice, but I didn't think about until my most recent viewing, that it even has a version of the "How did you find it?" joke. How did you find it? I just walked in and there it was. Oh, a bicycle. That was it. Same
Right.
scene actually. How did you find it?
What
Yeah.
brings you here?
What brings you here? That's what it is. A bicycle, but I left it out in the hall. Yeah, that's like, in I'll Say She Is, there's a moment where Groucho says to Chico, who was that lady I saw you with last night? And it's almost embarrassing. Like, really? The Marx Brothers are going to do a who was that lady joke? Like, that's so beneath them. But Chico's answer is, that wasn't last night. That was the night before last night. So that's so Marx Brothers to like set up a joke that you think is going to be the worst groaner and then to completely subvert your expectations for where it's going. Uh, there's something in the safe at second line that reminds me of that.
Yeah.
Oh, I know. I got another one for you in the same scene, as a matter, just like literally right after this. Just for that young lady, you will stay after school. Like he made the instead of like Harpo and Chico making them stay, he made the one girl. He's like, well, there's no point in keeping them after school.
Yeah.
I always love that line too. But
Yeah, he's
And
like,
then
I don't
after
want to
that, the
spend
little
time with them
cheeky
after
take to
school.
the camera.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, he has like a few of those in this, like turns to the camera that really work well. Father, that can't be right. Like all of that. Like and Zeppo even looks a little. Is he talking to the camera right now? Stuff like that is like really works well. And
That's the first
just
time I've used that joke in 20 years. That's another one.
yeah, yeah, all of that. He's like we have to suffer. There's no reason you have to. You can go out to get something at the concession stand. All of that, works really, and Groucho's delivery. That's another thing is the way Groucho's delivery, even his cadence, everything at the time was so different from other talking comedians
Yeah.
in the 30s, right? The way he speaks is always so razor edge. He's got like that razor edge to him. It's like it's almost like he's so like ah, I don't want to say disgusted, but it's just that, yeah, that sharpness. No one else quite had that. And of course it was of the time. It was so unique. And then, I mean, W.C. Fields he was super unique also as a speaking comedian in the 30s. He's another one. But yeah, that's something else. His Groucho's delivery in all these films is so different than other comics at the time.
Yeah, you're making me think of people like Eddie Cantor and Joey Brown and Will Rogers. Those were the big names, and they were all
Yeah,
innocent, and Groucho is cynical.
yeah, yeah. Cynical and like that. Like I just like razor wire around everything he says. Like that's sort of how I picture it as he's speaking.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
There is in the apartment scene, Thelma Todd's apartment scene, um, one of the most precious things in the movie, um, because you can't find it anywhere else, is Chico's vocal performance at the piano. I mean, there's no other time when Chico sits down at the piano and accompanies himself and sings. In
Mhm.
fact, he very rarely sings at all in any other movie. There's a couple of little moments where he sings a little in Go West. He sings a little
Right.
bit on Riding the Range. And I guess at the very end of Day at the Races, he has a couple of lines, but mostly Chico doesn't sing. But in Horse Feathers, he has this beautiful version of Everyone Says I Love You with
Yeah.
dialect jokes written right into the lyrics. He's so
Yeah.
beautiful at the piano when he does that,
That's,
and
yeah.
his little flirtatious looks to Thelma Todd. I mean, that is just the only thing like it on record.
I hadn't
Yeah,
thought of
that's a
that, but
great
you're right.
scene. Yeah. Yeah, that's what I mean. This movie just works so well for me. It's just like scene after scene. And yeah, I mean, like I said, it's probably the Marx Brothers film I feel warmest toward, Like there's just a warmth to it that yeah, I just really love, So as you guys are batting out scene after scene, all these like moments throughout the film, I'm like, yes, exactly. Yeah, I just feel so much positivity toward this film.
Yeah. I also wanted to bring up Thelma Todd because we'll be talking about her again on our third show. So, any comments on her contribution here?
I was wondering. I mean, I was wondering what was Connie's exact relationship to Jennings in this movie, do you think?
That's a good question.
Yeah, is she just a vamp that he uses? Are they in a relationship of some sort? Yeah, I don't.
It was kind of this ambiguous because he's like kicking them out of her apartment and all that stuff. And I'm like, who are you to do this, man?
Yeah,
Like what is she to you to where you're like throwing Groucho out? And I mean, why do you care?
Yeah,
Like if she was,
it's
it seemed like they
flimsy.
were
It's
kind of like some kind of couple, or
yeah,
kind of.
she's in
Yeah,
league with him, and they're plotting together.
yeah.
But I don't think. I mean, obviously, I don't think there's anything in the movie that you're missing that explains this. I think it's just very flimsy.
Unless there's another scene that was cut, we don't know.
Yeah.
That's possible, or perhaps it's lifted from something that's being parodied.
Hmm.
But you're right; it doesn't make any sense.
Unlike the rest of the movie, which makes total sense. Everything is
Well,
perfectly
that is an
logical.
interesting point, though. I mean, it is logic suggests, to whatever extent logic is useful here, logic does suggest that the Marx Brothers need some kind of real world to bounce off of.
Yeah.
And I think Horse Feathers does, Mel Brooks has this whole red brick wall thing, like comedy's a rubber ball and you have to bounce it off a hard brick wall to get it to bounce back. If you bounce it off a soft, squishy, funny wall, you won't get any action. And you could argue that Horse Feathers offers a squishy wall and not a red brick wall. It manages to be a fabulously funny Marx Brothers movie anyway.
well,
But
I
I
mean,
think,
I like in Monkey Business, we know that like she's Elkie Briggs' his wife, and that
yeah,
so it's
she's
like
a
you
gangster's
don't have
wife.
any questions along those lines. So it's like, as Groucho's like rampantly hitting on her there, but I mean,
Yeah,
And that's one of the reasons why, Noah, I like that Landau, Pendleton, and Pierce play it like just regular kind of dudes at this college because they're the one thing, those three guys, well, I should say the three things that do offer that real world, sort of something for them to bounce off of.
yeah,
The entire scene where their kid try to kidnap them, but instead they tie Chico and Harpo up and like they saw through
yeah.
the floor
Oh,
and
yeah.
all. So like that's one of the reasons I really noticed that those three characters are the three that are grounded in the real world,
Yeah, that's very
because it's
true.
necessary. Yeah, those characters have to be. Landau gives kind of a very straight, regular performance. He's the one, he's just like, all right, baby, you're gonna do this and this, and then Pendleton and Pierce are just dealing with Harpo and Chico like these guys are just kind of weird. Like, like
Yeah,
well,
they're no threat to them. They're
yeah, yeah,
because
yeah.
these characters are not.
So that
They may not be
helps.
villains, but they are heavies. They're obstacles
Heavies,
for our
absolutely.
heroes. But I mean, like,
Yes, yeah.
if the football scene doesn't quite feel like it gives us the climax we wanted, as with the racetrack scene in Day at the Races, like when the Marx Brothers are outside running around in a place that's already kind of wild, the Marx
Yeah,
Brothers,
yeah, yeah.
as an untamed force, don't have that much impact. But when they're in a classroom or an opera house or a mansion,
Absolutely. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, it's different, right? Yeah, right. And that's yeah, and so the end football game in this film does feel more just like a fun sequence, and but there's really no stakes. You don't really
Yeah.
right. That's kind of what you're saying. There's no real stakes there. It's just sort of like a fun, amusing sequence
yeah.
to climax the film with.
Well, they
Yeah,
have
I can understand that. I can understand that. Absolutely.
well they have steaks and French fried potatoes, but that's a different movie.
But as far as Thelma Todd goes, Andrew, I just think
The two hard-boiled eggs.
Make that three hard-boiled eggs.
one measure of Thelma Todd's greatness, and one of the ways you know she is a fantastic foil for the Marx Brothers, is that we don't miss Margaret Dumont. I mean,
Right.
how could it's
We
very
don't miss her
surprising.
in this one.
Yeah, in this one we don't miss her, and it's hard to even imagine, personally for me, putting a Marx Brothers movie
Yeah.
that doesn't have Margaret Dumont this high up on the list. But it's a tribute to Thelma Todd. She is just as good a foil for them, and
Yes.
that's remarkable in
Yeah.
itself.
And the momentum of the film, because you're right. I mentioned Wheeler and Woolsey episode we did, how much I love Margaret Dumont, just her presence in anything. And you're right. As I was watching, I didn't once see that's the difference. And again, I know even Alan Isles prefers Monkey Business, but I did miss her in Monkey Business. You know,
Yeah, I think so too.
um, I don't miss her in this one because the momentum and because of Todd, who's really cute and she works well with all three brothers in the film. She's a little bit she, the one thing that Margaret Dumont's stature is different than Todd's. So Todd gets kind of overrun by them easy, like more easily. Whereas if Dumont sort of can always hold her own with a sort of huff. She just has to give a huff or like look the other way, and you're like, all right, she's Groucho kind of can overtake her, but not really, not quite, because she's just such a presence. But whereas Todd, like, forget it. Like, it's like they're all over her. Even that's how the movie ends,
Yeah.
The three of them just tackle her, at the end. So, but yes, I agree because I love Dumont. And having her not here and not noted, not even thinking about it, that's a testament to everything, the cast, the momentum of the film, Thelma Todd, everything. Yeah, everyone.
Well, I should let the audience know that Anthony's pick for one of our next films is Hips Hips Hooray, the Wheeler and Woolsey movie, so we'll be covering that on our third show. And Thelma is in that, so we'll be talking about Thelma again. She's always welcome.
Indeed.
Well, I've been through
Indeed.
just about all of my notes, so anything further, Father?
That can't be right.
I think I've gotten through most of mine. Yeah, no, I think we've covered I've covered I think everything that I was going to talk about. Yeah,
Yeah,
I think I'm good.
I pretty much got everything. I pretty much all my notes. Yeah.
All right, well, then I guess that's the place to wrap it up then. So thanks,
Mr.
guys.
Noah, how about Mr. Noah? Do you have anything else? Any final words?
Oh no, I can talk about horse feathers all day, but the
Well,
people
why
in
don't
my
you then?
life have taught me that I really shouldn't.
Okay. Well, then thank you for being with us, Noah. I really appreciate it.
It's been a real pleasure talking to you guys.
All right,
You too,
well,
sir. Thank you.
Brian and Anthony, I'll see you for the next show, and thanks for doing this. It's been fun.
Been great, guys. See you later.
Pleasure.
Bye.